it takes just a second for it to start up. And here's a nice little spotlight for you, Anne-Marie. Here you go.
Thanks, Malachi.
Anytime.
I know how much joy you take in that. Welcome back. I see some people have clicked to join us. Our rooms should be closing in about 5 seconds, so we'll have everyone back with us.
Well, I don't think.
Oh, we
Somebody
cut someone off
interrupted
mid-sentence.
Ouch, that hurts.
Our apologies again for if we cut off any of your conversations. Thank you to all of you for your rich discussions. We have lots of gaps captured so far. Before we kick off to our next presenter, I just want to share the results with you from our poll. This is our first poll of what are the 3 words that have to be in a definition of well-being in the built environment. We see health and comfort very large here, productivity and happiness. So just a teaser, we will be doing this again at the end of the day to see if there's any new thinking or if this changes at all. But here is our first result from that poll. Our next presenter is Dr. Andy Persili. He is the Chief Energy and Environment of the Energy Environment Division at the National Institute of Standards and Technology at NIST. And we will pass it over to you, Andy. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks very much, Anne-Marie, and everyone else. And I guess, Maggie, you're doing the slides, and even if I don't see them, they're there. Oh, now I'm going to see them. Great, 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 great. Yes, so, I was asked to speak about my personal definition of well-being in the built environment. And I stress the word personal because that's what it said, and then challenges. And I guess my first challenge is I don't have a personal definition. So we can go to the next slide. And while I don't have a personal definition, I do have a dictionary, which I haven't used in years. I had to find it and take a picture of it. But if I did have a definition, it would be engineering based because that's my background, in terms of the research I've done over my career. I don't do health research. So it would be engineering based. It would be focused on ventilation and indoor air quality because that's what I know. But what it wouldn't be is a list of, indoor airborne contaminant concentrations because we really don't have that for the non-industrial environment. It would not be a list of contaminant limits, and it would definitely not be, have carbon dioxide at the top of that list. That's another 10-minute presentation. We really don't have a good operational definition of good indoor air quality. We know what bad indoor air quality is, high carbon monoxide, high particulate levels, moldy surfaces and spores going into the air, but we really don't have a good definition of good indoor air quality. So I'm punting on my personal definition. But in looking at some of the background material and thinking about this, it reminds me of, maybe 40 years ago when people started talking about smart buildings and intelligent buildings, and advanced technology office buildings was something that we heard a lot about decades ago. And when those came up, I asked myself, well, what about unsmart buildings? The one they call it smart and it's got all this whiz-bang technology, that's great, but what about the other buildings? And how do you keep these buildings smart? People get smarter as they get older. At least that's been my experience so far. I don't know how long that's going to last, but how do you keep a building smart? It's not going to do it on its own. And so that kind of brings me to some of my challenges, which is the next slide. First is existing buildings. The vast majority of the buildings of the future are already standing, they're already occupied. This building, actually, I found this picture of. This building is no longer standing, but most buildings of tomorrow are already up. So what are we going to do about those? It's a lot easier, to design a clever new building with all sorts of these great capabilities, but dealing with existing buildings is tough, based on, what you start with and the technology that's available and who's going to pay for them. So I think we need to talk about existing buildings for sure. And then, wellness or any other, label you put on a building, does not free you from the unglamorous details, also known as nuts and bolts. And I went out with my camera and took a picture of some nuts and bolts yesterday. These unglamorous details, they include things like commissioning. You can design a building and a great system and install it, but you got to make sure it's running properly, and that isn't going to happen by itself. And then through the life of the building, you have to, spend some time and money and people on operating the building and maintaining it. That's not going to happen on its own either, automatically, and it's not always the highest item on the budget, is to do this mundane stuff, to calibrate sensors, to change filters, to, take a look inside the air handler every now and then to make sure that you don't have standing water and other forms of muck, growing in the building. And this stuff has to happen. Too often, and then I won't pin this on any kind of wellness focus, but too often the money goes into marble and artwork in the lobby, not for for changing filters. So I think that's a real challenge, is dealing with this nuts and bolts stuff, these nuts and bolts reality of operating buildings. If I was a rich man, I wouldn't buy my alma mater a library. I would buy it the Andy Pursley Memorial filter changing program. And that's really it. I'm surprising myself that I'm not rambling past the 10-minute limit, but hopefully the organizers don't mind a little free time, and also hopefully this will stimulate a little discussion. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for your help, Maggie.
Just a reminder to post your questions for Andy on his speaker page. That is where we'll be moderating from for questions.
But you're going to pull those questions together, or do I need to?
Yes, Burton will be watching the speaker
Yes.
page for you. They're starting to come in now.
Yes. And then we have one question. So how to connect the operation improvement with well-being?
Well, I mean, the connection seems pretty direct. You're not, you might have well-being, kind of in theory before the building's occupied, and pat yourself on the back and, have a little reception, but you're not going to maintain well-being or anything without, doing the maintenance work, because over time, the system performance will degrade. Sensors will go out of calibration, dampers will break, all sorts of bad things happen. It's inevitable. So you will not, maintain wellness or any other of your goals, without the maintenance. Now how to connect it operationally and convince people that's the thing to do, that's the challenge. That's tough.
We have another question. Can you imagine a way in which the continued health of a building is mandated? And does this involve a different way of financing buildings?
Yeah. A mandate, in my mind, is kind of like a government body saying you got to do it, right? And having enforcement, probably more likely to, achieve success by thinking about motivation, motivating people to do it. Economically is probably a good way to go, but mandating is pretty tough. I would kind of focus on, on motivating people to do good things through, I don't know, that's policy stuff, economic incentives and other types of programs.
Another question, and you talked about unsmart buildings. So this is related to that. For existing buildings that are not designed for adaptability, how can we ensure new strategies of efficiency and well-being? How can we ensure new strategies of efficiency and well-being are being incorporated?
Right. I mean, that's a challenge, is how do you, I mean, if we had all the answers for new buildings, how do you get them into, existing buildings? And I don't really have the answer to that. I think it's something we need to, I guess my answer is we've got to think about it if we want to get there, because the turnover rate for new buildings is just so low, that if we do every new building perfectly, it's going to be a long, long time before we benefit from that perfection.
Maybe we move this one to the challenge list. So next question, every building will perform differently. So what sort of maintenance, upgrade criteria or regulations do you see being effective? What kind of research studies might inform this?
Well, regulations is tough for existing buildings, at least in the US. We have building codes and we have inspections and code officials. They come out, they look at the building before it's built or as it's being built or before it's occupied, and then they say, okay, this building's good, it complies with the regulations for construction, and they give it a certificate of occupancy and it's over, unless there's a major renovation. So we don't do regulation of existing buildings very well, whether it's maintenance or whatever. So that's part of the challenge of existing buildings. Research, I mean, that's pretty broad scope, research to show the benefits, but, of good maintenance and operations. Some people are doing that research to provide the data to support the economic argument. That'd be useful. And there's some database I think ASHRAE's been involved in looking at the costs of building operation and maintenance to make that case. So what does it cost benefit? It's getting the data, to try to convince people to spend the money. And we talked about this at our breakout. A lot of building decisions are based on first costs, not life cycle costs. And if you base them on life cycle costs, you'll make different decisions, but you need, those kind of data, to support those decisions, to get the people with the money to spend it.
Great. I'm assuming we have more time. A short practical question. Do you have any recommendations on low-cost indoor air quality devices?
No, I don't. I haven't involved in any tests of them. I will say, I see them for sale and I hear of people buying them, and I don't know exactly what you do with it. You put it on your coffee table. When you used to have friends over, for cocktails, you'd look at it and you'd point to it and it would turn red and the lights would flash. I don't really quite understand, what you do with that information. But so I don't have any recommendations for specific devices, and I think I need to understand why and what you're going to do with these better than I do currently. I don't have one.
That's okay, quite okay. So one last question. I'm going to read the end of this question. Do you think tech-driven approach is the right way to accomplish intelligent, smart building environments?
Which approach? I'm sorry.
Tech-driven, technology-driven.
Oh. I haven't thought much about that. I mean, I guess the technology of what you can do has to drive it to some degree, but it's got to fit into the larger, context of, of the economics and how the building is managed. You don't want to be a solution looking for a problem, right? You got to understand the context, adapt the technology or develop the technology so it fits in. Otherwise it's going to be another widget sitting on the shelf that everyone's excited about, and then unplugged and how it's gathering dust. So.
Great, thank you so much, Andrew. I think we're gonna move on to the next step in our agenda.
Thank you. Yes, just before we move to our next speaker, Jay, just a couple of notes. We are live streaming now. So just so everyone knows, we are on the live stream. We can drop the link to the live stream in the chat if someone from my team wants to do that. And if you'd like to share with any friends or colleagues, they can watch us live. And on that note, between speakers, we're going to do some calisthenics, some in-chair calisthenics. Yes, now that we're live streaming especially, but just to make sure we're engaged, go ahead and throw those shoulders back, roll them back, deep breath, whatever stretch feels right.
It's like those exercises we do in the airplane. Remember airplanes, you know? And in the pocket, they pull out and there are those stretches where you move your feet in circles and you lift your knees. So you can still do energy in your seat to keep the blood moving, keep yourself alert.
And while we're finishing stretching, Dr. Jay Zhao, if you would like to begin your screen share.
Do you see it?
Yes, thank you. I will allow you to introduce yourself, the Executive Vice President and Head of Delos Labs at Delos.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation and the great organization. My name is Jay Zhao. I work for this company called Delos. We're a health and wellness company. You may have heard one of our products, which is called the Well Building Standard. They're being ministered, so we are the parent company of the International Well Building Institute that's an administer and updating and managing this well building standard. So today I'd like to talk about our perspective, industry's perspective on the definition of well-being in the built environment. Okay, moving on. Okay. So as a health and wellness company, we defined these terms internally in our company because we want to be accurate and to speak the same language consistently. They are loosely used interchangeably by a lot of people, especially in industry, not as rigorous in academia. So we did this exercise in our company a while back. So I'm not going to go into the details and reading these words. But what I want to point out is to be aware, health, well-being, and wellness are three different terms. They have different definitions, different scope, and impacts different things of a human. So I'm going to zoom in to the well-being portion of that. So note that the definition here on well-being is not about well-being in the built environment. It's about general well-being of a human being. So I think there are different aspects of it, but for the purpose of this exercise of defining the term well-being in the built environment, I think we can draw connections of the built environment with all five aspects of this definition one by one. For example, the first is the broad definition, a person's attitude or subjective perception towards their physical, mental, and social conditions. That's the definition of well-being. But if we scope it within the built environment, I guess that's relationship. The second one is about a scale and characteristics of these things. Again, I think the built environment has impact on all of those aspects. It can be the cause and can also be the risk factor to the cause to having these impact, happiness or health status. Factors, how to measure, and it changes, it's a dynamic term. So that's the definition we learned and we adapted from a well-cited psychology study. The second question being asked was, what's the challenge? So put it very simply, from our industry's perspective, we always get asked, as a company, we sell stuff, and we always got asked about three questions. Why do I need to pay? Why? So that's basically the quantification of ROI, the benefits, the impact, all of those things. Note that the ROI, return on investment, that's on the financial term, on economic terms. That's different from the impact, meaning social impact, environmental impact, and other impact to the society. These two terms are very different in today's industry or today's business world because of the popularity of ESG and other framework of social impact, environmental impact, now public health impact. So that's the first question we always get asked, why? The second question is, why should I pay, right? Who's paying? It can be something within an organization. Should it be paid by sustainability department, or by HR department, or where's the budget from? So that's another more detailed. And then the third one would be how to quantify these ROI and impact over longer term, because you can sell them one thing for 1 year, but what about continuously? Are they a returning customer? Are they continuing with the service or the products for a long run? So these are the things we have to deal with day in, day out. So the next chapter will be, what are the steps to take to address these challenges? So as I mentioned before, one of our most famous product is the WELL building standard. So I want to use this as an example. How do we address these questions? So we developed the WELL building standard in 2014. We launched in 2014, and the goal of WELL building standard is for the people's health and well-being. Again, it's for the people's health and well-being. Buildings are a vehicle, from our perspective, to making people healthier. Building is not the end product. Our end goal is for people to be better. With that, and the reason is simple, we spend 90% of our times within the built environment, and that's why we chose buildings as a vehicle. But it's also because, from public health perspective, physical and social environment has the largest share on the determinants of health. This graph is a bit outdated from CDC. The new CDC diagram shows more breakdowns, but if you summarize, it's basically majority of our health is determined by physical social environment. Your buildings, your neighbors, your communities, where do you go to school, plus your healthy behavior or lifestyle. The typical medical care and genomics, which we spend as a society in the United States, we spend majority of our money when we talk about health is on fixing problem on healthcare versus preventing problems by giving you better lifestyle or better health, physical and social environments. So that's another reason why, right? And from the business perspective on investments, this is a typical breakdown of how business spends their money. Majority of the money is spent on people, on hiring, on salary, on benefits. Note that 1% on energy, it doesn't make energy less important, because this is only on first investment or only on immediate money term. This doesn't count carbon, doesn't count climate change. When we think about climate change and how does that impact us in longer term as a society, energy can be much more impactful than our human being short-term health from policy perspective. And well, as a system, as a framework, we considered the building design aspect, the operations of the building, but also the company policy perspective and the individual behavior perspective. How these three things holistically can impact people from health and well-being perspective. And this is the breakdown of the so-called standards. I would say it's the rating system. Air, water, light, thermal, sound, material. These are all the physical, environmental aspect of things. Nourishment, movement, mind, and community. It's more on the individual behavior and company policy and operations perspective. So the standards or this documentation and the background research, the citations, all the things we used to support this rating system is all open to public. It's on the website. You can go just search well-being standard. You can find all the documentation there, even the slides. So now let's go to the next question, which is what are the benefit? What are the ROI benefit or the impact benefits? So there are a lot of studies we've done on case studies, individual buildings, individual communities, but I want to highlight one thing, which is the engagement. For most companies today, universities as well included, especially in the OECD countries, they offer some sort of wellness and health benefit as this type of thing to attract talents. But the key problem for anyone to change their behavior or to adopt something that's new is engagement. How do we give people something they can continuously use, especially if that thing takes effort for people? So that's the active behavioral change engagement dilemma any wellness company is facing today. What we believe the built environment is a huge advantage is you don't need to do anything if you want to be healthier inside of four walls and the roof and the floor, because the space is there. If the space is healthier for you, you just being in there and you're being impacted by it. So you don't need to actively running. You don't need to eat only vegetables. You don't need to do all the things that takes efforts to change your behavior and lifestyle. Built environment passively impacts you all the time. So that's the adoption rate problem we're addressing here. So as a result, I think since 2015, these numbers shows how we developed since 2015. Now the standards or other programs, it covers 82 countries, more than 15,000 buildings, 1.5 billion square foot real estate is being impacted every single day. And the customers around the world, including 70 of them Fortune 500. So this does not mean we're done. This is the beginning of it. We are defining our goals, why we're doing this. We have the framework. It's not perfect, but it's something. But the biggest challenge moving forward is how to achieve it, which I highlighted on the title here, human-beauty interactions. We believe this adopting, we discussed this in the breakout room. How can we learn from the technology companies today and learn how they use theories of behavioral economics to attract teenagers to watch silly videos every day, but use the same technology and mindsets to benefit human health and well-being in the built environment. That's something we believe is critical. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We have great questions here. I'll start with the first one. For the 15% of people that participate in corporate wellness offerings, are those people that would have already been able to manage their wellness, or does it help lift those with the lowest wellness practices? I'm asking this question from an equity and inclusion point of view.
That's a great question. First of all, the company that can offer any wellness program would be at least beyond the lower socioeconomic class. And that's for one. Secondly, the people who are actively adopting the healthier lifestyle, all of those things, they're aware of that, are mostly, I don't have data here, but they're mostly are well-educated. I'm sure their income level and socioeconomic status is, again, above the average even within the company. So I don't think a general wellness programming offered by employers would solve the equity problems. But I also don't think it's going to make it worse, because making awareness is the first step. I think we discussed about education on children, on next generations. I think awareness is the key. And only if more people are understanding how built environment is important to people, that's only that, then we can talk about behavior change and doing other things. So one example we discussed in the breakout room was it takes a pandemic for people to realize how ventilation is important to your health for average consumer, right? Now they're all aware of the word aerosol. I think most people in the world now knows that word, or at least heard of it from the news. So those type of awareness is what we need. But hopefully don't take another pandemic or other disaster for us.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more question? Okay, one more. If well-being changes over time, what does that mean in terms of adapting, designing buildings to ensure well-being in buildings?
What's the first part?
If well-being changes over time.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That's a great question. I don't think I've thought about it before. I think well-being changes over time means well-being can be impacted. It doesn't mean the threat. Well, it means the threshold can move higher and higher or lower and lower depending on where you are or what are the factors you are being exposed to. But I believe because of its dynamic nature, then only then we can change it by improving the environment or improving other aspects of it. So yeah, I think it may get plateau, it may get to a point that is harder to improve, especially for the 15% that's always active, always running, always wearing Fitbits. So those people, they're already great on wellness. I guess it's time for the majority of the public to catch up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anne-Marie, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for our presenters. We will now move into breakouts again. This will happen in the same way as before. You'll be in new mixed groups. You'll have a scribe with you. You'll do your quick one neck breath introductions. Hi, I'm Henry. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm a creativity facilitator with no innovation. You'll discuss any new thinking you have around challenges or gaps, and your scribe will capture those top 5 or so on Post-its, 1 per Post-it to the challenges and gaps page. Again, we'll have about 30 minutes before we pull you back to plenary. And if we are all set and there's full understanding, and Malachi, are we ready?
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay, we will send everyone into breakouts.
Nice discussions,
right.
everyone.
See you soon. I just sent out all of the organizing team also. Let's move here.
What is
How's
this
the YouTube
blank
channel
one?
looking?
Oh, I don't know if I sent. Thank you for pausing the recording.
You're welcome.
Oh, Andy's back. Oh, hi, Andy.
Hi there. I got booted out during that transition, so I had to reconnect.
Oh.
Andy, before we send you back into your breakout, we had a question from participants if we are allowed to share your slides as a PDF on your speaker page at the end of the day.
To the participants?
On our Chi-Storm, yes.
Yeah, so it'd just be participants, not the great big world.
That's right.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, sorry, I've never been so short compared to the allotted time. I guess that's good news, right? In some ways.
You had chance to answer more questions than having a spontaneous conversation. I think it worked fine.
Yeah, it won't keep me up tonight, but I was surprised. You know, usually I run over, or I try I have to work to not run over. So hopefully I was on target or close enough.
Hey Malachi, we just had a chat that there are not many people in room 5. Maybe that is the right place to send Andy?
Yep, that's where I'm sending him.
That's my unlucky number, but I'll go there anyway.
Well, we'll try and change.
It's a new day.
I just sent him because I figured that would end up being something. We are still live streaming. Yeah. There are extra breakout rooms if you two want to jump into there and get some work done, and I will set a sort of waiting page in here.
All right. I didn't start the timer. I'm pretty good about that, but I forgot just about what was it been like 3 minutes?
Let's base it off of getting back on schedule.
There you go.
So we want to.
I moved there, and I'm moving you too.
Okay.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I just got out of class.
Oh, cool. Currently we are in breakout rooms. We've just had a couple of presentations. We'll be returning in, as you can see, 8 minutes and 30 something seconds. That's been wrong a couple of times though, so we'll
So
see if I got it
have
right.
A couple
Mhm.
minutes to grab like an apple or something and eat it really quickly.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could. I probably do even more than that with the 8 minutes you got.
Perfect. Thank you. I will be right back then.
Awesome. See you soon.
Hello, everyone, as we are returning from breakouts. Thank you for your rich discussion. We have lots of challenges and gaps captured on our challenge and gaps page. We have a break built in at this time, but before you leave, we have a few things that we would like to share with you. The first being that we have opened up our volunteer signups page. Woohoo! We are going to be asking for volunteers to please join us at the end of the day to help us.
Anne-Marie, we currently have about 28 people in. The number's going up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were all
Yeah.
here. I will pause.
You're a little fast.
Thank you. Will you let me know when you see the breakout rooms are closed?
They've officially closed.
Okay, sorry about that. For the 28 people that were here, just pretend you didn't hear anything before, and I'll start over. We are about to go into a break, but before we have that break, we have just a few things that we'd like to touch on with everyone. The first thing is our volunteer signups. We've opened up the volunteer signups page in KaiStorm. It's right under challenges and gaps. We are going to be asking for volunteers at the end of the day to help us with a couple of key tasks, and we promise to try and not take up too much of your time. But after our close, we'll be inviting volunteers to join us to help us converge on the challenge categories that we'll be coming up with after our break, and as also to help us tag our challenges and gaps for urgency and importance. These two tasks will really help us as we move into day 2 and finalizing our challenge categories and the challenges that we want to focus on in day 2. Signups, when you come to this page, this person with the check mark, and if you check that and click to sign up, your name will appear and we will be able to see that you would like to join us at 2 p.m. Eastern time as volunteers. You get lots of extra points for this. With that, I will pass it to Maggie to send us into break.
I will. There's a quick question in the chat, and it's just how much time for the volunteers. And so it might be for some people an extra half an hour or an extra 45 minutes, I think, probably. Would you say, Anne-Marie? Is that it? Okay. Well invested time to help move the workshop forward and be productive tomorrow. It is time for a break. So we'd like to ask you, if you would, please stay in the Zoom. Do not leave this meeting. You can just mute and close your camera. But I also advise you, please don't go check your email and get involved in something else. Take a break, go look out the window, get a glass of water, stretch your legs, go outside and get some fresh air if you can. It will really help you to feel more productive when you return. And we ask you to please come back at 6:40, whatever your time zone is, 20 minutes before the next hour. See you soon.
And I believe I saw Joseph Allen with us.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi. Malachi, would you mind putting Joe, Maggie, and I in a breakout?
No problem. Did you want Katie in there too?
Sure, that'd be
She
great.
is here. Okay, cool. See you in a bit.
Hey, Malachi or Anna Marie or Maggie, this is Melissa Billick. I had to teach class. I know we're in a plenary and it looks like folks are coming back, so I'll just wait here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back from break. We'll give everyone just another minute.
Love it. People come back and turn their cameras on so we can
Yes.
see for sure that they're back. And again, that feeling like we're in a room with people, it helps when the cameras are there and people are moving. I see some people doing calisthenics. So
Good idea. Yes, Julia has got the stretching going. Just a couple of quick reminders before I pass it over to our next speaker, Dr. Joe Allen. Please visit his speaker page in KaiStorm to leave your questions for Q&A. And with that, I will pass it to Dr. Joseph Allen, the Associate Professor of Exposure Assessment Science and Environmental Health at Harvard.
All right, thanks. So thanks for the invitation, and it's good to see some folks I know, and looking forward to meeting some others here. So on these two big questions, I'll try to use my time efficiently here on defining well-being in the built environment and also key challenges to adoption of this. I'll start the first one on definitions of well-being. These old definitions of health as absence of disease or infirmity, right, are being replaced by newer ones that appropriately capture well-being, health promotion, mental health, equity. It's a real move from pathogenesis to salutogenesis. And it represents a real fundamental shift in then what that means for the built environment. Right now, the entire world is focused on disease avoidance as expected. But with that shift and greater awareness of disease avoidance is this newfound appreciation, I think changed expectations for what the built environment can and not only can deliver, but should deliver. I think important on this definitional is changing the language. The language that we use matters. And here we want to learn from or co-opt some language that the business community uses. Every business talks about key performance indicators or KPIs. In the words of the famous management expert, Peter Drucker, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So businesses track this. Well, we put forward a framework that builds and kind of uses that language. Instead of KPIs, we like HPIs for health performance indicators. What gets measured gets managed. And in this case, we want to highlight that the most key performance indicator is health. And we put together this framework and have talked about this over the years, and essentially thinking about this in a 2x2 grid with both leading and lagging indicators, right? Businesses track leading indicators, but also lagging indicators. And for us, we're interested in human health, well-being, thriving, flourishing. But importantly, this is the part that gets overlooked often, the built environment is what's driving human health, performance, productivity, and well-being. So a focus on HPIs that focus on the built environment and buildings are actually indicators of population and individual health. On the question of key challenges, I think there are a couple that we need to address. First, I think we need to put buildings front and center in this conversation of human health. It's been missing. You talk about the current crisis, okay? People have recognized that the number one risk factor for COVID-19 is time indoors. No masks, low to no ventilation. So the building matters. We've known this for a long time. It's taken CDC, WHO, and others a long time to come along to that. Building has mattered since day one of this pandemic. The problem is that buildings are often an afterthought when we think about human health. So of course, that's too often cited now, stat on how much time we spend indoors. But the reality is, if you look at all of the if you look at what underpins society's knowledge of what drives human health or what constitutes healthy living, everyone gives the same answers. Physical activity, got to eat well, get good rest, air pollution's bad for us, don't smoke. Okay. How do we know those things? They're all derived from human epidemiological cohort studies. Framingham Heart Study, Nurses Health Study, Harvard 6 Cities Air Pollution Study. None of those talk about the building. So key challenge number one is we don't have the great human epidemiological long-term cohort studies of health in buildings. We don't. Our team just finished one we called the Global Cog Effect Study, maybe one of the biggest I know, 450 people, 6 or 7 different countries, right? But even then, that's nothing compared to the great epi studies that have been done. So it's this glaring hole, and we need to correct that. And placing buildings at the center of our understanding of health also is important in terms of the climate conversation. Buildings consume 40% of global energy. If we combine this, health indoors, we spend all of our time indoors, impacts on disease avoidance, but also health promotion, and the connection beyond the 4 walls of the building, the connection to health beyond the 4 walls of the building, it's clear buildings play a central role in our health. I don't think that's well known or accepted by the vast majority of the public. And so we need to do a better job of communicating that. 2, in terms of key challenges, we've been designing for minimum standards for too long. This is across everything. Certainly air quality, and I've been clear in my opinion for a long time that ASHRAE has not done enough here, producing bare minimum standards that are not designed for health. They've argued internally about whether some of these standards are health-based or not. Currently, they say it's health. I think objectively, they're not health-based standards. We need to change this and flip this from bare minimum, because this is what gets adopted and codified in building codes everywhere. And we need to change that. It extends beyond ASHRAE and ventilation. We designed to bare minimums for lighting. We designed to bare minimums for acoustics and water quality. That's a mistake. We've been in the sick building era, and I think we have a moment here to correct that. The whole world is paying attention to buildings. It might be our one moment to say, hey, there's a lot more here than COVID-19. And in fact, as plexiglass goes away, it never should have been in place anyway, but as plexiglass goes away, there are things that should stay. And we should be pushing above these minimum standards. The third challenge is something that I wrote with Michael Waring, a colleague of mine, in an editorial in a journal back in December 2019, ahead of the pandemic, talking about a healthy buildings research strategy for all. So this is the focus on equity. It's the most important aspect of the healthy building movement, is to be sure that it applies and benefits everyone everywhere. This movement, and this movement towards health and well-being in the built environment, will be a gross failing if it's confined to the brand new, beautiful building, skyscraper going up downtown in our biggest and best cities. And so we must play an important role. In fact, we have a responsibility to be sure that we're creating studies and that lead to application of healthy building principles that include globally diverse buildings and exposures, that include races and ethnicities that have been historically underrepresented in this research. We need studies that focus on the unique needs, physiology, and preferences of women. And we need to explore the entirety of the life course, from reproduction, including preconception, through advanced aging. I'll stop there, and I'm looking forward to the conversations. Thanks.
Joe, thank you so much. You raised very important points, and we have a number of questions. So I'll start with one of them. Do we know enough to generate the well-being KPI, and as you call them, HPI, for the built environment?
Absolutely. I'd say we've known for a long time. I think we've overcomplicated what it takes to produce a healthy building, what it means to be a healthy building. The science is all there, decades of research, long before I was in this field. It's existed for a long time. I like to think we've contributed to it. But I think what's happened is that a lot of that information has stayed stuck in scientific journals. It shouldn't be the case that you have an entire business community that's confused about what it takes, what the science says about health in the built environment. That's still the case. I have conversations every single day where you hear that confusion. That means we've failed in a large part to communicate all the richness of information that's available decades deep to help inform decision-making in the real world. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do that work, is to continue to communicate effectively. We do know what it takes. Now, do we know everything? No, science is constantly evolving. I think this is another key aspect of this movement, is that it has to be flexible and dynamic. Certainly we're doing things wrong today we don't know about. It's been true throughout history. And so we have to be able to say, well, what does the leading science say, and adapt and be flexible.
Great. Another question. How much contribution can built environment make compared to others, such as employment?
In terms of health and well-being, I think it has, it's an impact that's often hidden, right? And so, you know, the connection between our decision-making in terms of the products we put into our buildings, the materials we choose to build with, the embodied carbon in materials, the energy consumption, on-site fossil fuel use, all of these factors are influencing our health. You know, it has immediate acute impacts. There are effects that manifest chronically over time. So this has a bigger, as big an impact as anything else in our lives. I mean, of course, these are the places where we're spending all of our time, and we ignore that impact. And I think a lot of this goes back to one of my key challenges about the lack of data on long-term studies in this space, right? There's nothing that we know. If I eat too much red meat, that's associated with heart disease. That's well established, right? Tell me, if we're saying indoor air quality is associated with name a health effect, cognitive function in our work. Well, I have to go find, the handful of a couple dozen experts around the world, piece together 4 or 5 different studies and blast this out. And we don't have that, we can't point to that, 100,000 person study. So I'd like to see a lot more of the built environment included in these great big cohort studies we have.
Thank you, Joe. There's one question for the audience. I'm sure they know, but Joe is the co-author of the book titled Healthy Buildings. And this is, Joe, related to your book. It says, your book is critical of post-occupancy evaluations. Can you suggest alternative means to collect qualitative and subjective data to measure well-being in buildings?
Yeah, that's great that you brought up, and we are not nice about it. The post-occupant surveys at POS has another acronym for something else. I think they're often misused, and I think it comes down to, as we describe in the book, fundamental misunderstandings of basics of epidemiological study design and bias. And there's something called dependent measurement error we won't get into right now, but I'll simplify it and say this. If you have a measurement device like a post-occupancy survey, and you're asking in that same device about an exposure and an outcome, your results will be biased simply because what you're testing is whether or not people are stoics or complainers. And I'll explain that. If you ask me, I'll be the complainer. How's the air quality in here? It's bad. Do I have a headache? Yep. I'm annoyed. All right, I'm the complainer. I ask, I don't know, someone else, Piers. See Piers out there. Dr. McNaughton, he's happy, right? All the time. Great guy, always happy, have a headache, never, he feels great. Air quality's on, the lighting is good in his space. So, all right, so Piers and I are on opposite poles. We throw together regression, and wow, you can make any relationship appear. In fact, we've seen spurious relations presented like this all the time. Links between, I don't know, acoustics and length of commute and ridiculous things that couldn't possibly be related, but it's a function of that dependent measurement error from a POS, or post-occupancy survey. Now, the way to break it up is you can do repeat measures. So you start to say, so if you repeat these, then you start to say, oh, well, Piers is always here. We'll account for that. Joe's always here. We'll account for that. And you can start to see the real signal. Second, you can disentangle that by having an objective measure on either side. Objective measure on the exposure side, measure lighting, measure air quality. Then it's not biased in terms of the person's even self-report. So it's just something you have to be careful about. I see a lot of firms do this and put out what are really spurious relationships that are just a problem of the misunderstanding the methods and how to introduce information bias into study design and how to avoid it. So there's more. I'm not trying to sell a book. If you want to get into that topic, we spend some time on it because it's clearly a pet peeve of mine.
And it relates directly to the conversation here as well, the measurement methods. So maybe one last question, and it's related to the pandemic era we're all in. Why did it take the CDC so long to acknowledge the airborne risk of COVID in buildings? Is this a failure of building science communication?
Sure, I think we should take some blame. We tried our best. 33 or 34 op-eds in every major newspaper going back to last February. Every single one mentions ventilation, filtration, airborne transmission. Colleagues, Rich Corsi, Lindsay Marr, Shelley, people have been writing about this, trying to raise attention. Why did it not take hold? A couple things. One is, let's be blunt, the gross failure of the prior administration to acknowledge and take this seriously and even influence CDC communication. That's where this all stems from. Outside of that, we have historical problems that the medical community or the building science community, I'll blame it on us, not doing enough to embed ourselves in the conversations in the medical community. Epidemiology, great. All these skills matter. Medicine, great. Tell me how many building scientists are involved in the early outbreaks investigations? None. And so the building science group needs to be more deeply embedded in the epidemiology space, infectious disease epidemiology space. Third, there's a mistake in the medical textbooks that goes back decades, saying that ignores basic aerosol physics. They say respiratory droplets in the 5 micron range will drop out of the air in 6 feet. That's where the 6 foot, 2 meter rule comes from. That's wrong. A 5 micron particle will travel beyond 6 feet and stay aloft for 30 minutes or more. They're coming around to that. We interviewed Dr. Fauci about this in July and August, and they came around to it. He returned to Harvard Medical School the next month in September and said, you know what, we've been underestimating aerosol transmission. We've had the definition wrong. Unfortunately, that was 9 months after the pandemic started. So some of this is the siloing, errors, basic errors, and failure to incorporate new science into our understanding of airborne transmission. A totally inept prior administration that didn't take this seriously in the United States, all contributed. The current CDC now acknowledges airborne transmission, has a great website up on ventilation. They've adopted all the ASHRAE language. So we've seen big improvements. The downside is that it just took a long time.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think we could all stay here and discuss these great questions and your answers, but I think we're up with our time. Anne-Marie, back to you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Burchin. Before we move into our next breakout, which will be a slightly different goal than our last two, we'd like to invite you to individually capture any new thinking you have around gaps or challenges. This is our last time that we're going to capture gaps and challenges on the challenges, the yellow challenges page. We invite you to peruse through them and make sure we're not adding duplicates. But we'll take a couple minutes now to add any of those last challenges, any of that new thinking after Joe's presentation. As we get ready to move into our next breakouts, Malachi is going, or I can do it actually before we'll be turning on a new page that we'll be working in KaiStorm. But Maggie, will you share slides for us? Okay, thank you. This next breakout is going to be a little bit different. Again, you'll be in new mixed groups with new people, so do those quick one-breath introductions to meet everyone. And then go ahead and review together the gaps and challenges that we've identified throughout the day. The gaps and challenges page will be indexed on the categories page that we'll be working in. So you can review those together and discuss the top 6 categories that you see emerging. How might we make sense of these gaps and challenges? What are the categories we see emerging? So we're no longer capturing new gaps and challenges, but we're looking at what are the buckets that we might organize these challenges into. And we're looking to create headlines for those buckets.
I like this picture to think about it. Like, we talked earlier about how we're getting ready to make a roadmap. This workshop is creating the blueprint for the roadmap. And yet the blueprint has to have sort of like a strategy to it. Like, and often people use this metaphor of pillars. What are the strategic pillars? So you might think of the categories as sort of, what are the pillars that would be important milestones or important areas that need to be, not even milestones, important areas that need to be cultivated and developed on this roadmap that you're creating. So if you think about the categories are on the blueprint for the roadmap, those are the pillars that we need to look through to see the roadmap that we're going to make.
So again, we'll have those quick one-breath introductions. We'll review the gaps and challenges that we have identified so far, and then we'll make sense of these. What are the categories we see emerging? And if we were to organize these challenges into buckets or the pillars of a strategy, what might the headlines be? And we've put a couple of examples on the categories page where we will be capturing these. A couple things to note, just like before for our scribes, 1 per post-it for the headlines. And these aren't full sentences or multiple sentences. We're really looking for a headline. And some examples include, oh, we went back a slide. Thank you. Some examples include difficulties in data collection or lack of consensus on measurements. And I'm sure we'll come up with more in our groups. Does everyone understand our next breakout? All right.
Seeing lots of head nods. Thank you.
Yes. So again, we'll be capturing on the categories page, and we will have about 30 minutes or so for this breakout as well. Malachi, how are we looking on breakouts?
Breakouts look good.
Okay, with that, we will send you into your breakouts. Again, we're looking for those top 6 headlines, and we will see you all in about 30 or so minutes.
Have fun.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Mohammed. Do you need some help? You're currently muted. Mohammed, if you could unmute yourself and just let me know what I can do. Oh, you've joined twice. I see you're having some connectivity issues.
Sorry, yeah, well, it's not just when I was assigned to a breakout room, my Zoom froze.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Do you remember what room you were assigned to initially?
no, I think it was just loading, so I don't.
Okay, that's fine. I could just put you into a room. Room 6 looks like it has some space. Mohammed, are you still here with us? There we go. hi, Dr. Gerber, or Dr. David Gerber, however you prefer. If you'd like to unmute yourself and just let me know where you at in the system, in the process. Are you just now joining us? Have you been with us and had to drop off? What's the deal?
I am just joining. I got yelled
Just
at by somebody for not being able to join earlier, but I had to give a keynote lecture in Barcelona, so I had a conflict.
Ooh, Barcelona. For one of the people on our team's
No.
currently living there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Maggie's in Barcelona. Been there for a
Cool.
while now, I think. Anywho, let's see.
So
Catch you
I'm
up
here
this-
on the Zoom, and I'm
Yes.
also was just looking at the IN2WIBE workshop page.
Mhm.
I don't know how to join anything else other than the Zoom. Am I doing something wrong?
No, you're in the right spot. Give me just one moment.
Okay, so there. Okay.
All right, Dr. David Gerber, I'm going to move you into a breakout room and they will give you a briefing and then we will try and get you caught up, okay?
Okay.
Sounds good. Hi, Hamed. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you can unmute yourself and just let me know, are you joining us for the first time today or have you been sort of in and out from the meeting?
Hi. No, I was in the morning. I was a little bit late for the afternoon.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to
I could
send you
just
to a break.
silently.
Huh?
Okay, that would be great. Yeah.
I'm going to send you to a
No, that
breakout
would be
room
good.
to
I was
get
just gonna
briefed,
say.
and then we'll move you into another room. Okay?
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. Hi, Sophia. How are you? If you could unmute yourself and just give a quick catch up. I think I mistimed something earlier. Where's this? I'm just going to turn that off. Sophia, you're currently muted. If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and just sort of letting me know where you are in the process. Are you joining in the sort of middle? Are you joining right now for the first time, or have you been here before and you're coming back after a long break? Okay, I can respond to you in chat, or I can just catch up. So as of right now, we have maybe about 4 to 5 minutes before everybody comes back, and then we sort of move on to the next activity. So if you want to just hang out here for everybody to come back, and you'll get another rundown, and you can join in on the activity after that. You have 30 seconds before everybody is forced back into the room.
We're seeing some people returning. I'll now start pouring back into the room.
Yes, the rooms are all now officially closed.
Thank you.
You may begin.
Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that those were rich discussions. I expect they were. I actually snuck into some of your rooms to listen in, and I thought that there was an interesting exchange, and really want to appreciate, again, the scribes for the work they did to help capture the insights that came out of there. And thank you all for your work and your thinking. Let's do another poll. We started with one. We wanted to know what were the 3 words that you would think of to describe well-being in the built environment. And we wonder, has it changed? Has it changed because of the presentations that you've heard or the discussions you've had? So there is another poll, very similar one, recognizable but different. The link is in the chat. Please, if you would click through and take just a minute or two to tell us what 3 words now. Maybe it's the same 3 words, that's okay. Maybe some of them are different, but we're curious. And tomorrow we'll do a little comparison to see how our idea of keywords for well-being in the built environment changed over the course of the day today. I'll give you another moment to do that. All right. Has everybody had a chance to do it? Let's see some head nodding. This is the hardest part of our virtuals. We don't get to read your body language, so I'm always scrolling through and I'm appreciative of people who are smiling back and nodding their head, so we know that they've done the task. Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Maggie, and thank you for participating in that second poll. What's ahead? We're nearing the end of today's workshop. Thank you for all your hard work today. I'm going to appeal one more time for volunteers to join us at the close of the event. We will meet and just brief you on the asks that we have. Malachi is currently pulling you to the volunteer page. So when it says fancy seeing you here, that's us being a little bit funny because we've pulled you to that page, and the hopes that you will sign up to help us in the task and challenge of narrowing in on these challenge categories that we've come up with together, so that we know which ones we want to work in tomorrow, as well as tagging these challenges and gaps for importance and urgency. And that will also be a big help for us tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will review and work together in mixed groups to come to shared definitions. We'll match categories and gaps together, and we'll prioritize those gaps and challenges. So we'll be mixing again in lots of breakout groups and working to narrow in on that blueprint for our roadmap of our challenges for IN2WIBE to address in the future. Up next, we will be moving into our Wonder networking event. This will be an opportunity to chat with our speakers a little bit more. I think one of them had to leave, but as you can see on this slide, the Wonder Room will have room areas designated for each of them. When you arrive in Wonder, Malachi is pulling you to that page now as well. When you arrive in Wonder, you'll have a little circular icon that you can move around. I recommend using, as Maggie is showing, you can click or you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move into those rooms. It's not pictured here, but Malachi will be in the help desk area. So when you zoom out of the Wonder Room, you'll be able to see that. And if you do need any help, you can find him there. Before you move into Wonder, please note that the platform works best from either Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. It does not support Safari, Firefox, or mobile devices. So please be on a computer and use Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. This is an opportunity to look back at those speaker questions that we may not have had a chance to ask, and to just have a more informal discussion with our speakers before our close. Are there
I
any?
might just add, Anne-Marie, when you go into the Wonder Room, go up and look in the left-hand corner for this little plus and minus bar. And if you hit on the minus bar, it will zoom back out so you can get a feeling for all of the rooms that are available to you. Sometimes when you go in, you're a little bit close, you might not see that.
Yes.
And can you move around to different rooms?
Yes, you can move your icon, and when your icon goes up to another circle, you'll be able to see those people and to chat with them. We will have our organizing team and our moderators in there they've all buzzed around in Wonder Room before today, so they will be able to help as well. With that, I'll pass it for any quick closing remarks from Zhang.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for this wonderful contribution. I was in a few of the breakout rooms. The discussions were very good, informative. I hope all of you can rejoin us tomorrow morning. I think tomorrow we start at 10 a.m. Eastern time again. We will have some activity as we just mentioned, and then we're looking forward to see you tomorrow again.
Thank you. Yes, the join Zoom button on the welcome page will be there at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. That is how you will join us again at the same time. And to our volunteers, please stay back from the Wonder Room for just a moment. We will let you go to join Wonder after we brief you for just a moment. We will not come back into Zoom today except for our volunteers.
I suppose people can stay in Wonder as long as they want to.
Yes, it is a soft close at 2 o'clock. So if you are having rich discussions in Wonder, you are welcome to continue that beyond 2 o'clock. I will recommend one last thing. If you make sure you leave the Zoom. If you are in both Zoom and Wonder, you'll have some feedback between your mics.